months has kind of taken lead on that, and he has created a list of like the most popular maybe tenants of a tenant's Bill of Rights. And so what we've done is we want to take like a poll amongst us to find what is most popular, what you would like to see in your tenants Bill of Rights, and then from that, we, as a Housing Justice Committee group, we want to go canvassing and say, hey, you know, this is happening all over the country. It has to happen here. It's the only way we're going to get protection as tenants. So let's start from the bottom up and go forward. Did you print out the papers?
Yes.
Awesome. So let's let's hand those out. Is that what we want to do?
Well, when we hand them out, I'd like people to do it right away rather
Right away,
than
okay,
talk
we'll do that at
right.
the
So
end.
yeah,
Okay,
maybe do
cool.
it at the end.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give a brief presentation on the Tenants Bill of Rights. Can we go to the next slide? So, okay, it's also commonly referred to as a Renter's Bill of Rights, and it's, I mean, you think you may know, but you also have like a really good idea. It's kind of, it is, you know, what it sounds like. But I think people don't really understand like how much gravity they can have, like how much weight that these bills of rights hold. Next slide. So a lot of people think that we already have protections as tenants, and that's kind of true to some degree. Technically, there are federal, state, county, local, municipal, you know, protections as tenants. But that's kind of, you basically only have those protections if you can afford those protections. So if you can afford a lawyer, then you have those protections. If you are struggling with facing eviction or displacement, you probably can't afford a lawyer, right? So at a federal level, we have the Fair Housing Act of 1968 that basically prohibits housing discrimination, including rental discrimination based on religion, race, sex, national origin, and then later it's been amended to include disability and family status. But I mean, I'm assuming most of us are tenants, like renters, or have been at some point, or know, you know, the experience, how it works. Those protections, they're kind of bullshit, right? Like, you know, they may say we can't discriminate based on national origin, but the landlord can do whatever they want. They can rent to whoever they want. So if they have an application from someone from, I don't know, Mexico, for example, and they don't like Mexicans, there's nothing stopping them from not renting out that unit to the Mexicans, even though it's technically federally illegal. So then on the state level, we have, I would say, more protections, but again, it's still, can you afford those protections? In Ohio, for example, we have a right to fair housing, the right to get your security deposit returned, and the right to have a notice before your landlord enters your apartment. Okay, who's ever got their security back in full? Like, no one, right? And it could be because, you know, there's like scuff marks on the floor, or I don't know, you had a rave in your apartment. Like, it doesn't matter. The landlord can say whatever they want. And same with, you know, the notice of entry. When I lived with him, our landlord would show up all the time. You know, and on the opposite spectrum of that, end of the spectrum, like you'd ask your landlord to come over, and then they wouldn't for maybe like 3 weeks or a month, and then they show up, and you're like, you don't want them to show up. And so again, the state protection is kind of ridiculous. And then obviously, like at a county level, we can go to the next slide. At a county and city level, something that we've been working on in Cincinnati, and by we I mean the city of Cincinnati, we've been working on pay to stay, right? And that's basically, it's an ordinance that was adopted last year in 2021, and it's stating that if it's supposed to force a landlord to stop a non-payment eviction if the tenant can pay all past due rent and fees, which on paper, and it is, it's a reformist and kind of like transitional, if you will, idea, but what happened was in Cincinnati, because it was passed by council, they are supposed to be following this, right? But that county, Hamilton County, the magistrates are saying, no, we don't think that this is good. Even though there's no office, or like there's no, I guess like civilian opposition to it, they decided on their own, no, like we're not gonna follow this law. There was one case that went to like a municipal judge, and that was challenging the decision of the magistrates, but ultimately that case was dropped because the original landlord, it was like some technicality, like they served the notice to vacate like 12 hours too early. So this like case that could have set this amazing precedent was just tossed out. So like with the state and federal level, this is a protection that we're supposed to have, yet no one has been able to use it yet. Okay, so why hasn't this worked? Why don't we have good tenant protections? What's happening? So obviously, a lot of people put a lot of stock and faith into elections. So at the federal level and the state level, there's no accountability, right? Someone could run for office saying, all I'm gonna do is work on tenants' rights. And then because there's no way to hold them accountable, that never happens. And we kind of see that happening right now at the Cincinnati level. There was one commissioner candidate who specifically ran, like her main platform was, we're gonna have a tenants bill of rights in Cincinnati. And yet here we are a year later and it's only talked about on like slow news days. Like it's on the back burner. I don't think it's ever gonna be on the front burner. So again, there's no way to hold her accountable. But ultimately what hasn't worked is hoping that your landlord will be nice to you. And I think that's what a lot of people, they have so much going on in their lives, they hope that, if their situation ever gets bad enough, that they can just like talk it out with their landlord. And as we know, that's not really feasible. Okay, this one has a lot of words. If you can go to the next slide, I'm gonna kind of skip most of that. So the Tenants Bill of Rights is very popular nationally. It's like the new craze in housing rights activism and organizing. So within that, what is most popular is the right to counsel. And that is kind of, in 2017, New York City, they guaranteed a lawyer to every tenant facing eviction, and they dedicated $155 million to the effort. That was the big one, and it's kind of just exploded from there. Even this is a little out of date. I would say every state has at least one city and one like big town working on a tenants bill of rights. Like I mentioned earlier, like Lexington, Kentucky, which is way smaller than Cincinnati, is on the verge of getting their tenants bill of rights. But why this is so important, why the right to counsel is so important, is because of a kind of landmark example in Cleveland, Ohio, which they launched a right to counsel in mid-2020. And since then, 93% of tenants who received legal representation successfully fought their evictions. Yeah, I don't know, I think some of us have been to eviction court as either, like aiding people like on behalf of PSA, but just having a lawyer there by your side, they don't even have to say anything. You're taken so much more seriously, and you're not taken seriously otherwise.
And we have local data that shows that when there's a lawyer there, they get off.
Yeah.
But most people don't have a lawyer.
Right. Well, and that's intentional on behalf of the state, and yeah. So okay, if we can go to the next slide. So there are obviously a lot of legal challenges for a tenants bill of rights. The ultimate challenge is, I would say, capitalism, but I would also like to kind of reword that and say a really big challenge to capitalism is a tenants bill of rights, a challenger of capitalism. And this is because newly enshrined renter protection laws are hard to enforce, like Seattle, for example, a judge overturned the first come, first served law, which I think is great, but I won't say too much more on that. And it's because the landlords claimed that the ordinance was violating their right to property, free speech, and due process. Next slide, please. So ultimately, we can, if we're fighting for a tenant's bill of rights, that's great. If we're not, that sucks and we should be, but the best thing we can do is know our rights. So in addition to legal protections, we need, like, campaigns concerning tenant's bill of rights or any kind of tenant protections are important because they get us out there talking to people, and people have way more rights technically than they even ever knew about, and they obviously have the capacity to have even more rights that we need to help them understand. You can start a tenants union, you can join the NKY Tenants Union, you can join the Cincinnati Tenants Union, and then we're obviously already connected to a tenants' right organization, that's us, but we need to get other people involved as well. So, okay, that's pretty much it for the presentation. And so what Reg has created is a list of 11, I guess, options for a tenant's bill of rights.
So what we did was basically look at examples from other cities. Seattle is terrific in spite of what was said there in general. It has a lot of good things. Miami-Dade County has been really strong, and Palo Alto was another one that had good examples. So we looked at a number of examples of what cities were including in tenants' bill of rights and put that list together. Then we went through and tried to see what do we already have, either because of Ohio law or Cincinnati law. And what we have here is a set of 11. Now, 11's pretty long, and so we're asking you to rank them 1 through 11 as to what you see as most important. And this is a pilot sort of survey right now, and as we develop it more, we'll probably cut it down on the ones that seem most important, and then do what you were saying, going out to tenants, doing door-to-door, that kind of work, and developing good numbers so that we can use that to go to the city council and ask them to enact this into law. That's the ultimate goal. Whether it's Cincinnati, where we may be focusing on, but other cities and towns around here as well.
You in part answered my question. Is the intention when we're door knocking to get people to sign something, get like it's on the ballot and have like a ballot initiative to pass a tenant bill of rights? Like what is the end goal?
I guess to ask them to, if they support it, but more importantly, what do they see as most important, so that when we talk to city council people, we can say, we've talked to, say, a few hundred tenants, and these are the ones that they think are most important, and that's what we want to fight for. You know, as with all politics, it'll end up being something of a negotiation, I imagine. But we would like both endorsement, but also what are the key ones, and that's what we're starting here, is asking you to rank them to see what you think are the most important ones there. So,
I think the one answer to your question, Seth, is I don't think we decided yet, right? But the city council members themselves can put forward and pass a tenant's bill of rights, and at least one of them has said that was what she was campaigning for. So if we're going around and collecting information about what people want, we can put pressure on them so it wouldn't necessarily be a ballot initiative. We don't have to go to issue 3 level, but we can really start making a stink about it and push some other people to do the work for us to start to get this out there.
And it'd be like a data collection, data collection operation essentially. Where
Right.
we, like, look, we talked to dozens of people. This is what they're also dealing with the same stuff. Like it's not just us. We're talking to people.
So it would be more, at least in the beginning, more of a like you said, data collection, but also like awareness raising for
Yes.
tenant bill of rights, and then see what happens with city council.
To clarify, the idea, I think, is that a motion would be brought to the chapter after this to actually launch something of a campaign, probably in the next budget season.
Yes, yeah, and when we first started working on this, it was, Cincinnati based, but I would like to say that, in my opinion, Victoria Square, the situation there would not be happening if we had even the most basic tenant's bill of rights. And there are multiple, in the list of 11, there are multiple points in of themselves that would have prevented this happening. So obviously we want to take it to Cincinnati, but I think we can take it to, you know, canvassing in Newport as well. Obviously, like we have multiple counties up here, but, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that was perfect.
So come to our meetings and have a say in what
We're
happens.
in process, I think is important to say, and thus this pilot that we're doing today is in process. So let me just mention 4 things that are in either Ohio law or Cincinnati law, and thus are not included in the list of 11. So right now, lead paint, to be free from lead paint, that's in city law. Right to repair, I thought that'd be a really good one, and I think this needs to be clarified, and maybe we'd want to, but right now, Ohio law does say that you can withhold your rent. Now, there's a kind of complicated process to go along with that, but you can withhold your rent if your landlord hasn't make the repairs that you've asked for. So that's not included in the handout here, because that is a law, although it could use clarification. Also, right to organize is a right that we have. That's Ohio law as well. Yeah, I think, I guess those 3 there. So what I'd like to do is hand these out, not say anything more, and if you read them over, there's 2 things that would be really helpful. One is ranking them, number 1, the most important, 11, least important. And if you think it shouldn't be on there, then just don't use all the numbers. But also, as a kind of pilot, are there any of these that are not clear? And just add notes there or something like that, if you think the wording could be better or if it's just not clear. That's usually what happens with pilots, with surveys there. So when you're done, just fold them in half, we'll come around and pick them up. Libraries luckily lent us a few pencils here, so let's see, Todd, if you want.